They're not just grooming your children in their sexual and gender ideology. They're also using CRT to turn them into good little communists.
Good afternoon. Thanks for having me again. Sorry I was a little bit late. A couple issues I'd like to discuss is last meeting I was here, I expressed some concerns about the context of the I'm Here badges. What I'm disappointed in is the following day, a member of this board posted that badge on social media and expressed unwavering support for what it represents. The concern I have is that was pretty much a symbolic middle finger to the parents that came before this board and expressed their concerns respectfully and reasonably. Putting a disclaimer on a website that specifically identifies an individual as a board member on an unofficial, and I'll say that in quotes, campaign page, well, that dog don't hunt. It reflects this board, it reflects our district. And I'm sure any competent attorney could dismantle that defense in a matter of minutes, court of law. So I'm asking the board to consider passing a resolution of censorship on any comments that reflect the board's position or may be interpreted as reflecting the board's position on such controversial issues before they're resolved. The next thing I'd like to discuss is the symbology associated with the equality badge. That is essentially a facsimile of the NEA badge that was put on. Notice in 6 of the 8 characters on that badge, 6 of those 8 characters represent some form of sexuality. Let that sink in for a minute. So why are we talking to our kids about sexuality at school? This is not sex education. Doesn't belong in the school. And the green semicolon, not sure I understand how equality applies to suicide. It's mixed messages that don't belong in our schools. I don't walk down the halls or go to a football game and say, that's a gay student, that's a straight student, that's a black student, that's a Jewish student. I see students. I see Fenton Tigers. We have policies in place already in the code of conduct to discuss discrimination and harassment. We don't need this. But the most important thing I see when I go to these games, where I walk down the halls, it's not even, the bottom line is they're kids. They're kids. They've got enough problems to worry about at this point in their life, rather than injecting some drama into something that should be left to the family or community resources, not academics. Let's focus on STEM. Let's focus on athletics. Let's go back to We Are Fenton. Let's focus on being Tigers. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Cuddy.
You know you're in a cult if 1. You believe you are what your imagination says you are. Delusional, characterized by or holding false beliefs or judgments about external reality that are held despite incontrovertible evidence to the contrary, typically as a symptom of a mental condition. You know you're in a cult if 6. You believe reality isn't real. Delusional, characterized by or holding false beliefs or judgments about external reality that are held despite incontrovertible evidence to the contrary, typically as a symptom of a mental condition. You know you're in a cult if 10. Thanks to Jamie Lee Curtis, who didn't know how many Oscars she'd won, them can't count. You know you're in a cult if 11. You will cry in protest to take a real black woman off a syrup bottle and a Quaker off a box of oats named Quaker Oats, only to put a fake white woman on a beer can. All while saying, I can't believe they're so upset over a beer can. Bud Light parent Anheuser-Busch's stock has lost $27 billion over Dylan Mulvaney. You know you're in a cult if. 13. If you get triggered because someone doesn't think you're special because you were born into one of the CRT-approved victim groups, they believe deeds and personal responsibility warrant pride. You know you're in a cult if. 18. Lost your shit over To Kill a Mockingbird and Huckleberry Finn but are screaming about banning books with gay sex and masturbation in school libraries. You know you're in a cult if. 20. Will lie even with irrefutable evidence. You know you're in a cult if. 21. Being so filled with hate, you will groom, mutilate, and murder your own children, all while calling your opposition fascists. You know you're in a cult if. 22. Believes that out of 7 billion people on the planet, white, straight, males are somehow oppressing everyone else. You know you're in a cult if. 23. Will lose your shit when someone points out that you're not oppressed, you're just stupid. You know you're in a cult if. 25. Will refer to a biology book as right-wing propaganda. You know you're in a cult if. 26. Will lose your shit if someone actually uses proper English instead of your made-up pronouns. You know you're in a cult if. 32. Are the same people who say you can't indoctrinate kids to be gay with a book or a drag show, but continually accuse the church of doing that very thing. Although religion isn't taught in schools, and you're not forced to go to church. You know you're in a cult if. 33. When someone is simply talking science and common sense, you will try to bring religion into it. Well, you know the church. Well then, don't go to church. It's not against the law. Not going to school is. You know you're in a cult if. 34. Will use unrelated behavior to justify their sick, grooming behavior. You know you're in a cult if. 39. Will lose your shit when someone says you're in a woke cult, and to prove you're not, you do the things on this list over and over and over. You know you're in a cult if. 40. Will accuse your opposition of that which you are guilty. You know you're in a cult if. 46. Consider chemically castrating a pedophile horrible and inhumane, but chemically castrating a child just dandy.